Because, parents are always like, it teaches violence, and they become crackheads, and they just fight each other. Like, have you ever seen a kid who plays video games? They ain't fight nobody,
Who needs crack?
Well, they did sell crack on Oregon Trail. I don't know if you know about... No, I'm absolutely joking. He's like, man, I need to play Oregon Trail.
Does it run on Linux?
That game is fire. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Super Agile Bros. As always, it's going to be a great episode. Today, it's going to be really fun. We're going to be talking about gamification and learning games and our personal opinions about that topic. So I know Steve and Kyle both have strong opinions about it, but I'll introduce them first. Kyle, tell the people hello.
What's up, everybody?
And Steve, you know the number. Do your thing.
I just got new glasses, so I'm actually wearing glasses now instead of contacts. So you can call me Glasses Steve.
Wow. How about we just call you Four Eyes? That's like the original.
Dang. Like, I haven't heard that in so long.
Yeah. I feel like Glasses.
I
feel like Glasses Steve is like the worst nickname. Hey, my nickname is Glasses Steve.
I agree.
Hyphenated.
It's the worst nickname. That's what Keisha calls me when I'm wearing glasses. She's like, "Oh, it's Glasses Steve," and I'm like,
"Oh, disrespect.
Do I not exist?"
There's a distinction.
Keisha. Disrespect.
Yeah, a woman after your own heart, surely.
Yeah, this is a super side note, but there's a fighter in the UFC who didn't have a nickname, and he beat two guys really fast, and he's like from out of the U.S., the U.S., and he's like, "Call me no time, because I beat everybody in no time." So that's
call him Dirty Ears.
So that's officially his fighter name, No Time. So anyway,
I've heard that a lot growing up. Call me No Time.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Get hurt, them dad jokes. Steve's ready.
Not ready.
So let's get into it. So I wanted to do this episode now. There was another episode we had primed in the pump, which is coming. An episode where we talk about deep dive into the bald head man himself, One Punch Man. But last episode, the last time we did the podcast, we kind of went on a tangent talking about gamification, and I felt like it was a hot topic. So I was like, let's get into it. So let's go ahead and get started. Like, I want to ask you guys straight out the gate, and like, what do you guys feel about learning games and gamification in general? Like, what is your take on the whole world of learning games and stuff like that? And even the concept of gamification. You could tackle however you want. What do you guys think?
Four Eyes, would you like to go first?
Oh, are you talking to me?
Really? Thank you, Glasses Steve.
Yeah, I'll go first. So I think this is a weird way to put it, I guess. I think morally, I like gamification and learning games. Depending on, what Kyle was talking about, where people just come up to him and they're like, "Hey, I want you to make a game that's like Halo, but it's about selling cars." I think that was the exact example he used.
Yes, I think so.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that's stupid. But, games are very useful for learning lots of things. And depending on the subject, you can actually build the learning into the game. You might be able to have something like a quiz, like to test the knowledge, or you might just have to rely on exposure, like exposure to the topic throughout the game, and that's how someone learns. But I think that's really cool. I think everything should be a game.
Ooh,
interesting.
Yeah. You can quote me on that.
You are now quoted.
Don't quote me on that.
Officially.
No, it's done. You officially are quoted.
Immortalized.
The edit. I'm going to edit out the "don't quote me" on that.
It's just going to be long silence.
So
he just says "quote me" twice.
Okay, we got some positive vibes about it. Okay, Kyle, what about you?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't appreciate bad gamification when it's passed off as good gamification. I appreciate the effort that kind of goes into it. Like, there's experiences that I've had where people have tried to make learning more fun and just, it was either tough or they just didn't do a good job. So I understand that. But when I see places where they're like, oh, our stuff is super engaging, super fun, and then it's just obviously pandering or just not good, then I'm like, you are the reason why people usually turn away from learning games. But I think as an initiative, I think it's great because, tutorials, like we talked about this a little bit last time too. Tutorials are like where you learn how to actually play games, but they're super effective at teaching. And so, like, learning games are like tutorials where they're actually teaching you something while you're enjoying yourself. And I think that's really good.
Okay, that's real. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think I agree with you guys on the concept as a whole. Like, learning games, like games that enable learning, being a good thing. I just think that, like, it's kind of like communism. Like,
oh, good. Yeah, let's make that a topic.
Here we go.
In theory, communism is perfect, right? Like, everybody shares equally, everybody works equally, everything is great, we all eat, we all are rich and well fed. But the reality is, like, when it comes down to it, like, people have different work ethics and people have different goals and what they want out of life. So communism doesn't work. Similarly, I feel like learning games, when given to the wrong people, can be like communism in the sense that, like, they don't know how to actually put it into practice in a scenario where it can work. And I feel like I see it so oftenly done wrong that, like, I almost am like, just stop. Like, I do have good memories personally from games that enabled learning. And maybe we could talk about those a little bit. But, like, for me, I struggle with learning games because I really feel like the people who espouse it or try to, like, lead the charge are the wrong people. Like, they don't even understand games on a fundamental level. Like, how dare you talk about learning games? I mean,
you are banished.
But I don't know. Do y'all feel? Have y'all run into that situation where it's like people who should not be, like, leading the learning game or the gamification initiatives, like maybe companies or whatever? Have you ever seen that? Like,
I can't. Yeah. Sorry, you go ahead. You have something nice to say.
Oh, you have something that's not nice to say? I kind of want to hear that.
It's not. It isn't unnice. It was the opposite of what
go ahead, Steve.
I'm talking the most. I'll just go ahead. I have not really had any experiences that I can say came from a specific company or from people. I'm sure I've played games, learning games that were ill-advised or ill-formed. I've definitely played some of them at a certain tech company. They were meant to be, they were barely games. They were pretty much just like drag and drop versions of like multiple choice questions.
Mm-hmm.
They were just fun quizzes, interactive quizzes, I guess. Not even fun.
Interactive,
not fun.
Yeah.
They took mildly more effort than just clicking a little circle.
But isn't that kind of redundant, though? Like, interactive quizzes, like, and that's how it's, that's how it's marketed. It's like, interact, but you have to interact with it at its core. Like a quiz, nothing happens if you don't interact with it.
Yeah, so it's super redundant. You watch a video, and then at the end, like, all right, play this game. It's like, this isn't a game; it's a quiz. It's just making it more difficult. It's a less accessible Steve. Quiz.
You have lives.
Yeah. I feel like it's just like, I don't know, like a quiz. I don't know. To me personally, a quiz is fundamentally not fun.
Right.
Like when it, like if I'm playing a trivia game, and maybe that's a segue, but it's like a trivia game. A lot of times there isn't like an actual thing at stake other than bonus. Like maybe I win and I beat my friends, or I make a lot of money, and that'd be awesome. It would suck if I didn't win, but like it's always a bonus. I feel like when you do like learning gamification quizzes, it's always like you fail this, you have to do it again. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
You don't really learn anything from the failure state. Like in actual games, I would say puzzles are quizzes. They're because quizzes are just knowledge checks, right? Like, have you been paying attention up to this point to be able to get past this point? And it's like, it should be checking if you're prepared to go on to the next place. But it more so just gets you to regurgitate information, which isn't fun.
Well, puzzles, you're talking about puzzles do that?
No, I'm saying that's what trivia does.
Okay, sure, yeah. Yeah.
Or I guess quizzes in general kind of all fit within just regurgitation.
I don't know if you want to go into like specific games right now. Maybe you still want to stay more abstract. But as you've been talking, I've been thinking about all these games that I loved. Learning games. Ahead. All right, I'm gonna name drop some things. Well, I'll do one at a time, so I don't overwhelm anybody. Have you guys played Mind Maze from Microsoft Encarta?
Mind Maze. I don't think so.
I don't think I have.
Elaborate, Steve.
Okay, I'll take that as a no. So, Mind Maze was a game. Do you know what Encarta is?
No.
Yeah, it's basically the encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I guess Kyle's a little too young for that. Yeah, so a long time ago, before the internet, it was during like the beginning of the internet. Microsoft would package essentially a multimedia enabled encyclopedia, and you could buy it. It was called Encarta, and it had all these articles and like video clips and music clips and all sorts of cool stuff. And I strongly remember having our home version and like going through and like reading every single science article I could get my hand on. And here I am now. But
Glasses cool. Steve.
They destroyed my vision. But they built something called Mind Maze into Encarta. And Mind Maze, I'm surprised you never played it, Brad, but it was a trivia game where you're in the mind maze and you have to travel. It's like a point and click type game where you're in a room and you click on a door, but then to go through that door, you have to answer a trivia question. And I don't remember the exact rules, but you're trying to essentially get out of the maze. And as you go, you unlock the map, right? You expose the map. And there's some penalty for wrong answers. And it was pretty difficult if you didn't know the subjects. So I loved it. And that's all it was. It was trivia. Like, it was totally unrelated to the gameplay. Like, all the things we talked about last episode, it was terrible at. Because you had this cool atmosphere with these weird characters that are all kind of trapped in this weird maze with you. And then you're just answering trivia questions. There's no, like, correlation. But as a kid, I loved it.
Well, let me ask you this. So, as a kid, you however you got Encarta, did somebody tell you to play this game? Or was it like you discovered it or just found it on your own? Like, how did you learn
I do not remember.
Game?
I don't remember.
At least was it a part of your homework or anything like that?
No, it was not. I don't think so. I definitely, so we had this at school and I'd always be on it at school. I think my family like bought it. Like, so we had the home Encarta as well. But I know a lot of the other students knew about it at school. So I don't know if we discovered it together and it was just one of those things that spread by word of mouth, or if the teachers were like had us on there. But there's some sort of trick or secret to opening Mind Maze. I forget what it was. Maybe it just seemed that way to me as a child because the adults didn't know how to use the computer, and I was clicking every button on the interface and probably found it, and it was just there.
It was just an option, but it was like it was hidden the whole time.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So I was far too young, but
so and I just immediately, like, when I think about the story you're sharing, I think about a lot of the learning games that I grew up on, right? And I think what's interesting about the experience, like, okay, for example, there's a game that I played on the MS-DOS or whatever it was called, and it was like this dinosaur game, and it was like you needed to get all of the dinosaurs before the meteorite hit the planet and killed them all.
Oh, wow.
That's nice.
But like honestly, and all it was like, imagine like Doom type kind of graphics where it's like billboarding, where it's like a 2D sprite that kind of always looked at you as you moved around in the little maze, and you just had to find all the different dinosaurs before the time ran out. I can't remember exactly, but like fundamentally that game was like just a game about learning all the different types of dinosaurs, you know.
Great.
Like,
yeah,
That's
I don't
cool.
I don't remember any of them, but I do remember like it would talk about it, like the megalo blah blah blah, megalodon did this and blah blah, you know, like,
yeah.
and it would break it down. I mean, I was like really young. I was like 3 or 4, so maybe it was above my pay grade. But I kept playing that game over and over and over because I think the thing that was fun to me about it was trying to beat the level, which was to get all of the facts or to get all the information.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And like you said, Steve, even if there was a quiz in the game, I think I would have still enjoyed it, because I think to me, that would have been a part of the experience. Like, oh, I got to find all the dinosaurs, and then I have to beat the evil master at the door, you know, to get out of the place. You know, I need to answer the right questions. You know, it would have seemed fun to me, you know? And
I think that's because you were like, you know, interested in the subject matter. So it was like it was valuable to you, like, rather than them telling you it was valuable, you know.
I think that's probably part of it. I think we're also just enjoyed being good at it. Because if you learn it, then you do well.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's satisfying to do well.
It is.
And you do better every time that you play it again.
Right.
If you get that same question from Encarta, you know, Maze Mind, you're like, oh, I know this one. You know, like, oh, what was it again? You know, it's not that it's a self-imposed challenge, because you could quit any time, but you're always trying to be better, you know?
Yeah.
As long as you're in it, I guess it is.
All right. I'm gonna name some more games. Please tell me you've played these. So have you played any of the Pajama Sam games?
Yeah.
I've heard of it, never, or maybe I have played it. I don't know. Describe it.
It's a point-and-click adventure, 2D animated.
He's a little boy. I think he has blue skin. His pajamas are blue.
It's a little blue skin boy. That's correct. There's several games. I played the one, No Need to Hide When It's Dark Outside.
Oh yeah, that's a classic.
Yeah. So Pajama Sam he's a little kid who loves superheroes, and he pretends to be Pajama Man. And he's going to fight the monster in his closet, and he falls into his closet into like an alternate dimension, and you have to find the 3 items that make him Pajama Man is his mask, his Pajama Man limited edition lunchbox, and his flashlight. And then you have to fight Darkness at the end, and then you get to the end, and Darkness is just this really cool guy who plays like checkers with you. And
my type of darkness.
And I maybe it's not a learning game. Maybe Kyle, you can tell me as well. But it felt like it was kind of a logic game, and you learn like it's a point and click game. I think point and click adventures are good at that, because you're trying new things, you're figuring out puzzle solutions,
right?
And some of them are based on like actual physical, like the physical world. Like, if you mix these 2 things, you get fire, and you can use that to, you know, burn a hole in the door.
And then keys. So since they were centered around kids, I would say that they count as learning games, but they were more open than like, oh, we're just going to learn about shapes or colors or numbers and letters. Like all that stuff was kind of integrated into the puzzles.
Right.
And so I think they did a great job also integrating those puzzles into the story, I guess, that you'd follow, because since it was a point and click, you know, there were multiple screens, but you could go through them in any order, and, you know, places would open up as you get certain items and stuff, but they're almost kind of like, you know, baby's first point and click.
They're problem solving. That's what it is. Like logic and problem solving.
Yeah.
Which at that age is definitely a learning game.
And they're really good. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's
high
interesting.
quality.
I do remember Pajama Sam now. Like, I remember the image of him. I don't think I played it, but that's the thing. It's weird because now that you say that, I remember thinking, man, I want to play that game. I remember seeing it at like Walmart in the gaming section near the computer stuff because I used to go over there all the time, you know, and look at what was over there. And that's interesting. Like, like I wanted to play it. I mean, even if it was just a learning game, I wanted to play it. Like I remember the feeling. I can't say that I remember Pajama Sam and the storyline. I just remember going, "Ooh, that game," and like seeing it, and it seemed cool to me. Like
they were so well animated, and they had they were fully voiced. Like they might as well have been cartoons, like interactive cartoons. Yeah. Like they were super high quality. Like they were top tier games, just as games. You know,
and there's a bunch of games I had that were like that. Freddy the Fish,
Putt,
yeah. Mm-hmm. I think there's a third in that little group.
I don't remember.
I still have that jingle in my head. You know, Putt saves the zoo.
Yes,
Putt saves the zoo.
So, there were like PBS spin-off type games that were in the same vein. Like Arthur had some, and Sesame Street had some. They were all very similar, but I think it was those three. I can't think of a fourth one.
I had one called the Robot Club. You guys heard of that?
No.
The Robot Club, essentially the game is a series of missions. You're like a high schooler or a middle schooler, and you're part of the Robot Club. And this Robot Club it's a school club that secretly is like solving. They're like vigilantes. They're solving the town and the school's problems, but they're doing it like under the table so no one can catch them because they do things their own way by building robots. And so you would build a robot and the task is, you know, deliver pizzas. So the robot has like a light sensor and wheels and a pizza detector or whatever. And you have to put the parts on, which is it's like Legos. You just stick them in the holes. It doesn't matter. But then you have to program the robot. So it's you learn about loops and you learn about states.
Interesting.
It was very formative for me.
Wow.
You know what's interesting? Like as you're talking about these games, like I'm thinking about like there's a game used to play called The Incredible Machine on MS-DOS, and it was like basically like this game where it would give you all these items in a room, and you had to figure out how to like move a certain thing to a certain part of the room. Like it would give you a fan, iron, a bowling ball, a light bulb, and you had to like put them in a certain place to make these like, it's kind of like a Rube Goldberg. Goldberg machine.
Rube Goldberg, yeah.
And I used to play the mess out of that game, like crazy. Matter of fact, I want to play it now I'm thinking about it. Because it was so complex to me. But you know what's crazy? Like I'm 100% sure, like thinking back on it, like that was one of those problem solving games. And it was like, for a kid my age playing it was like a learning game. I was learning how, like a bowling ball is heavy. So when I put it in a basket, it does this. And like I'm learning how physical items in the world based on some rule set would work. Yeah. And even thinking about games like Math Blaster and
Math Blasters. That was one of the games I was thinking of.
Like Mavis Beacon teaches typing, like maybe Mavis Beacon felt more like a learning game, but a lot of the games I just said it, a lot of them just felt like games to me. Like especially at school, if we had computer time, I wanted that time to last for 2 hours. Like I didn't 100%. Want it to stop. I wasn't like, oh my goodness, I gotta play Math Blaster, you know, like I was like, oh, we get to get on the computers, you know, like
have you guys
you go ahead, Kyle. I've been dominating.
No, it's all good.
No, go ahead, Kyle. What do you think?
I'm gonna step into your paint. Have you guys played Oregon Trail?
Of course, man. The OG. Man.
I've actually never played Oregon Trail.
What? This man has played Robo Boy, but not Oregon.
Right.
I've never played any text games except A Dark Room.
Wow. So what were you saying, Kyle?
I was gonna say I think. So I was exposed to Oregon Trail when I was much too young to appreciate it. So I didn't play a whole lot of it, but I do know, I guess, just how deep the game goes. And there's YouTubers that I follow and stuff that have played that game like recently, and it still holds up.
Mm-hmm. No kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, like I got introduced to it maybe in fifth grade, fourth or fifth grade. And yeah, I
Mm.
mean, even the fourth or fifth grade, that's above your pay grade, son. Like
Hmm.
you get the general rules, but you don't understand the systemic decisions and how like, oh, if I do
Right.
this, it'll affect this, that'll affect this. And uh I remember actually in high school when I was in a senior, I think. Oh yeah, I think I was a senior. We played Oregon Trail as a class. Like
Oh wow.
and we debated on
Oh,
decisions and we died immediately. like it's still pretty difficult, right? Like
Yeah. So do you know? I guess the core of Oregon Trails, Steve classes, Steve.
um, what do you mean? I mean, no, not really. I know it's a text game. I know that you're traveling and you have to, not get dysentery, and you have to, I assume, feed your animals and feed your family and stuff like that.
the original
Yeah,
meaning,
that's pretty much the
dysentery.
gist. The
Yeah,
dysentery, man.
yeah. I mean, give it a full description, Kyle. Like what is Oregon
Yeah, hit
Trail?
me.
Yeah. So cut in if I missed something, but effectively, yeah. So you start off with a band of people in, or do you go from Oregon or to Oregon?
You're heading to Oregon.
Yeah, you're headed to Oregon. I think that this is during the gold rush or something, in some sort of famine, I think. But anyway, so you leave your settlement with just a little bit of like food and water and stuff. And then you have this carriage. And then like along the way, there's like all these things you have to manage. Like your people are going to get hungry. They're going to get tired. They each have like their own personalities and needs. And then
Oh,
you're also going to encounter other people along the way, both friendly and ones that want to just take all your stuff or even end your life.
hmm.
And so, and this game came out like forever ago,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like super deep. And then like along the path, like it's not just a straight path where it's like, oh, here's another NPC. Like sometimes you'll have to cross rivers. Sometimes you'll have to debate whether or not you're going to, attack livestock that you see on the side of the road that might, belong to somebody else. Like a bunch of different decisions.
Oh,
It's
okay.
crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think
That's
yeah.
that's. I mean, it makes sense that it holds up because I think about this game that just either I don't think it's come out yet, but it's new. It's coming out now. Route 55. You've seen the trailers for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it sounds like. You're trying to go somewhere.
Yeah.
It's kind of randomized, but you make your own decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and the situations you run into are different every time.
Yeah, I think Oregon Trail introduced me to the concept of RNG. like, now I
Right,
wasn't
right.
aware
Yeah.
of what it was at the time, but it's like going, because like Kyle said, you're trying to make these decisions. You're like the biggest decision when you cross that river. Okay, do you ford it across? Do you like float it? Like you have to make a decision, and horrible things happen. Right? You're like,
Yes.
oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like, oh, this person has dysentery. Do I need to feed them more? Or do I need to, and like, oh, should I pick this person up?
And
Should
kids
I?
don't know what dysentery is, so they're like, "What does that mean? What do I do?"
I mean, you learned today when all your people died. Like you learned like, oh, if you didn't know what dysentery was, you played a game once. And like yeah, like sometimes you need to go hunting, and the hunting mini game was brutal. Like, and you had so many bullets, and even if you killed a whole bunch of animals, you could only carry so much meat, and like it was
Right.
all these like you're weighing
Yeah.
decisions and like I honestly don't think it was made for kids. It just was a
It
game
happened to.
that happened to fall in front of children, you know?
Sure. You guys played a dark room with me, right?
A dark
A
room.
dark room.
Remember, it's a text-based game.
Oh yeah, I did.
It was in a browser tab. We were playing at IBM.
Yeah, I remember that one. You introduced me to it.
I played way too long. Honestly, way too long.
I
Uh,
got to the point to where you start to explore the map, and I was like, no, I have to stop here.
Exactly. Yeah, I had to quit as well. But yeah, there was not to diminish the Great Oregon Trail, but that's really my only point of reference.
So wait, what's the? I'm not familiar with the dark room.
A
What is
dark
that?
room.
Oh, sorry. So it's a text-based game. I guess text and buttons. Um, but yeah, you start in a dark room, and your only option is to like stoke the fire, and then someone peeks their head in and says, "Hey." So basically, over time, people come to you're in a hut, and you can build other huts and make a village, and people will show up and they'll have jobs, and they make furs or they smolt metals and stuff. And sometimes wild animals will appear, and you have to deal with them. Sometimes, or not deal with them, but deal with the fallout from that. Sometimes your families will have kids, and you have to like give them more food. And then there was a mini game that opened up where you can go exploring, and the game would change, and you'd have a map, and you're walking around. It's like a grid map, and you have random encounters with turn-based action, and it was brutal. I got killed so many times, or killed.
Yeah.
I got defeated so many times. I lost so many resources by like random animals just one-shotting me, and I wasn't ready.
So this game, first of all, the name The Dark Room is very misleading because I thought it was like an escape room game.
No, a dark room. You start in a dark room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's super weird.
It's super specific of a name. That doesn't really lend itself to, I guess, how vast the name is.
It doesn't. But I think that's the best part of it, or it's part of the charm, is that it isn't that you're escaping the dark room, but the game centers and begins in a dark room, and you always go back to that room. Like, that's your base of operations. I guess you're the leader of this village.
So how is the visuals presented? You said it's a text-based
It's all
game.
text. Yeah.
So you don't see anything.
Yeah, you get a message that says, trader appeared, what do you do? And you can push one of the text buttons. Okay,
so it's truly just text. Like one of the, I can't remember the name. There's a name for that.
Not adventure. There's another one.
Not a CRUD game. Is it a CRUD game? No, I can't remember. Anywho, that's interesting. Now I gotta look into this.
I'll send you the link later. I still have it bookmarked.
Yeah, send it to me. I've never.
Oh yeah, and it saves your progress in the browser, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I lost that a long time ago.
Oh, also, I think Oregon Trail is one of the games that introduced a lot of people to permadeath.
Yeah.
Because once you died, you were dead. But hey, so okay. So we've been talking a lot about like our really good experiences as kids with games that were learning games. So I want to hear if y'all have had an adult learning game experience that was like, oh, this is top notch. I'm enjoying this. Have y'all played a game as of late? So
are we differentiating between a quote unquote learning, like educational game, and a game that teaches you its mechanics?
So, I guess, we can always do this, but like, what is a learning game? Like, I think we were in the last episode we talked about is like a learning game is just a game fundamentally, right? Like it's just maybe it's heavily focused on you learning a particular real world thing. I think that might be the only difference, right? Like God of War doesn't really teach me anything necessarily about the real world, right? But like Oregon Trail at least teaches me history. God of War teaches you some type of weird history, alternate,
it's
mythology
fantastical.
History. But it's more focused on trying to teach you something that actually matters to your life in some way. If it's learning how to type, if it's learning a certain job skill, if it's learning so on and so forth. So that's kind of, I don't know if y'all agree with that definition, but that's kind of what I think of when I think of.
I think that's a good way to, the way that adults kind of see learning games. Because if you don't, kind of segment it that way, then like simulation games could be considered learning games.
Right, but that's what I was going to say actually.
But they're really like that's not really their intent. They just happen to be firmly grounded in reality. So when you do something in that game, it may teach you something, but it's not necessarily their goal to do that.
Yeah. So maybe that's it. Maybe we just focus it kind of like Steve, I think, said it. Like a story focused game is based on the developer's goal for it to be story focused. Even if the story is garbage or we don't like it and maybe we only like the gameplay, if it's the developer's goal for it to be story focused, that's what it is. So like, let's think about it as a learning game or a, educational game. It's the focus is to teach you something. That's the intent of it.
Ooh, I don't play. I can't say I've played any games like that recently. At least none that come to mind. But you know who does? Alpha Beta Gamer.
Oh, he plays everything.
He plays everything.
Yeah.
And he played one game. I remember. I think I showed it to you guys. It was a game where you're basically playing. You're playing chess or checkers or something with this old lady or this old person, and it's implied that this old person is your spouse. And the room, like, as you play, there's like shouting and screaming outside and gunfire, and then like you hear explosions and the power goes out, and she lights a match or she lights a candle, and you guys keep playing, and then like you hear banging on the door, and she holds your hand, and the game ends, and it's like, congratulations, you've learned about what it's like to live in a war. You know,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Interesting.
it was so hardcore, and it's like a 5-minute game, and that's the only reason it exists, is to teach you, also to like elicit, I think, that emotional response. Like, you really feel kind of like scared and tense while I was just watching him play. You know, it's a 5 or 10 minute video, and I was like devastated afterwards.
Oh, wow. So that's good that the experience came across so heavily.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a game called, I think it's Train Car. I don't, Kyle, you may be aware of it. Do you know Jane McGonigal? Kyle? She's like
not by name.
She's like
Minerva McGonagall.
She's a luminaire in the game development industry. Like every GDC, she has a talk. Every GDC, she's like a highlight speaker. She's a really like important person. And she made this game called, I think it was called Train. And basically the game it's a board game, I believe. And you're trying to like make your train line more efficient. And the train line is for moving people, right? It's the train. But the backstory is you're in Nazi Germany and you're trying to optimize how many people are sent to camps. And and the thing is, like, as you get better at the game, you're also like you fundamentally can't get away from the consequences of your action, because it's like little pieces of people, and you put it in the train, and they get sent, and then you know they're being killed. You know, it's like, whoa, like,
wow,
it's that's a
That's
game.
heavy.
Wow. So you learned about trains and the Holocaust.
Yeah, and I don't think she ever produced it. I just think it's one game that she owns or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
It sounds like something that would be at like an art installation or something.
Yeah. So I don't think many people have played it.
That also reminds me of Papers, Please.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Where you learn how to be a border officer, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things, and where like there's people who are doing learning and educational games in a way that's, trying to teach you something meaningful, right? In these rare, I dare say rare circumstances, but I feel like the majority of quote unquote learning games fall within a career space. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, as a child, almost every game in a way is a learning game,
Right.
Because you don't know anything. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't know anything. So, this is how a gun works. Oh, this is how grenades work. Oh, this is how jumping works.
This is how cause and effect works.
Exactly. So you're learning. So every game kind of falls in there. So anytime you play something, you're just like, oh, this is fun because I'm learning something. But like, I feel like most quote unquote learning games for adults are purely focused on skill enablement.
Yeah.
And
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I cut you
Yeah,
off
go
there.
ahead, Kyle. Yeah.
Now, so you made me think of, I think that's just because of like, as you get older, finding a state of play becomes a little bit more difficult. Because when you're a kid, pretty much everything you do that isn't restricted is more or less playing. And so like once you get older and you begin to realize, certain, you understand things more, then when you're doing like a business task, like you're not playing, but then like if you work at a supermarket, right? You're a cashier, you hate your job, but then you go to Home Depot and they have like this whole supermarket play toy, and kids are like, yeah, let me ring you up. You got 30 loaves of bread, and and I'm not getting paid for this job, but this is fun. That's what kids are saying. And so, but I do have an example of a game that I think was successful and is career focused.
Okay.
If we're still talking about that.
Yeah, man.
Hit me.
And I played it recently because I was recently doing like a little research, I guess, on the state of gamification as it is. I didn't do very much, so don't ask me any questions about it because I don't know. But one of the games that I came across was actually for Domino's Pizza, I think. Or was it Pizza Hut? Anyway.
I love where this is going.
Anyway, so it's like a new member orientation. And it's super like serious in a way, but at the same time, you can tell that, they know you're not going to take it as seriously. But so there's like different tasks to do. But what got me was, it's kind of hard to explain, I guess, but it wasn't like, reading about pizza dough. And, in 1974, the first man created pizza dough by mistake, in his bathroom. Like, you didn't learn that stuff. But instead it like brought you to kind of into a play area where it was like a sandbox of making pizzas.
Interesting.
Because I guess fundamentally, like the most interesting part about working at a pizza place, I would think, is, crafting the pizzas.
Maybe I would say eating the pizzas.
Well, you're not supposed to do that if you're working there.
I think
the worst.
That's why I don't work at a pizza place.
Like, well, my best part of working at Pizza Hut is eating the pizzas. Just every time an order is made, just
I'm
eating.
full of pepperoni.
They're like, yeah, get out, you're fired.
Yeah, fair enough.
What do you mean I wasn't supposed to eat the pizzas after I made them? But anyway, so what it does is like, it brings you through the assembly line, but at each phase, it's like, so the first thing you're going to need is the dough. And rather than like making you do some weird mini game of preparing the dough, it's already prepared because, and so then you go to adding toppings and they're like, you need to add a flat surface of cheese and make sure it's evenly spread. But they meant that, but they write it in a way that's more interesting. And it's just enough text where it's like, okay. And then they let you do it. It's not like you click a button, the cheese is added. Mm-hmm. Like you add the cheese yourself and it's checking to see, if you covered the area, and it gives you like feedback. So it's like, oh, so I can be better at putting cheese down. And then you go through the meats and they're like, even coverage of meats, make sure that there's flavor in every bite. And so they're like, there was flavor text about the flavor in the meat. And I was like, somebody really thought about writing this rather than saying, just make sure there's enough meat on the pizza, but not too much because, that's got to come out of your paycheck if somebody gets one extra piece of sausage. Right. And so rather than beat you over the head with like rules and regulations and stuff, it kind of incentivized in the game, to do better at making the pizza. And so at the very end-ish, I think it was the end, they were like, you're doing great, but one of the main skills, or like what our pizza makers aspire to be, is like, we have somebody that makes a pizza in like 60 seconds or something like that, like with all the toppings, or maybe it was 10 seconds or something crazy. But it was like
number.
Yeah, but then it like gave you a little bit of like competition there at the end too, rather than like you go through all that stuff and then get a quiz. Like, how many ounces of meat were you supposed to put on the pizza?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like somebody went through it and was like, these parts of the experience are what sucks all the fun out of it. And they removed those.
So it was fun.
It was fun.
You played
it? It was fun.
So you played it?
You played it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, I don't know how, but somebody just posted the link in the article I was reading. So
okay,
I was able to access it. It kind of didn't seem like I was supposed to be able to see it.
They were like, we just, it's like you get sent like a link to an internal link to a website that should not allow you on there, but you're just in the company's page, like downloading data. Yeah, no, I think that's like, okay. So to me, I feel like that's it. That's the game that, okay, if you want from a corporate sense, if you want to do training, like make it a simulation type game, right? Like, I think one of the I can't remember where I heard this or read this, but somebody was like arguing for kids playing games, right? Because, parents are always like, it teaches violence and they become crackheads and they just fight each other. Like, have you ever seen a kid who plays video games? They ain't fighting nobody.
Nobody.
Who needs crack? When you have Oregon Trail.
When you got Oregon Trail, so, well, they did
dysentery.
sell crack on Oregon Trail. I don't know if you know
kidding.
about that's like this. No, I'm absolutely joking.
I was like,
This
maybe
game
opiates, but crack
He's like-
seems pretty extreme.
He's like, man, I need to play Oregon Trail.
Does it run on Linux?
That game is fire, but does it run on Linux? Thank you. But he was just saying, like, the reason kids need to play games is because it puts them in an environment where they can learn to fail safely, right? It teaches them how to fail. And I feel like in a work environment, failure is like the worst case scenario, right? Like,
Yes.
you never ever want to miswrite an email or copy the wrong people or have a bunch of typos or do something present badly in a meeting. And
Not even once.
Like, that's like, so what it makes you is risk averse in general, right? And
Yeah.
and as a person who maybe you're not super comfortable with public speaking, you're not going to take the chance. You're just going to, like, if the opportunity comes, you're going to be like, I'll pass on that. And I feel like the best type of learning games are what you just were describing, Kyle, where it's like you get a chance to try it. It explains to you what's happening. Like, maybe it's a speech game, right? And you're up in the front and it gives you dialogue text options, or you do this or you do that. But it kind of mimics it in a way that, there is like a fail condition, because I think in order to be a game, you need to have a failure condition. But the failure is like, cool. You want to try again? You want to try to be better? You want to try to get an S rank? Like, instead of you failed, you got to you got to watch the whole quiz video again. And
And I think
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've already spoken. It's your turn.
No, go ahead, Kyle. You start
Yeah,
talking.
I'm gonna change the subject, so you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, just to piggyback off of what Brad said just now, I agree. That there has to be some sort of end state for a game to actually feel like a game. Because like if it goes on forever, then like what's the point? And so yeah, I think like either a fail state, or like if there's a time limit and there's a score you're trying to reach, maybe there's even a target score that you don't reach, to get to the S rank. But I agree that to the whole thing about failure, especially when at the price of failure is they say, well, you're inadequate, and so go become more adequate.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah. And then if it's directly tied to something that you have to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a year end, safety thing, or like, you don't go into that with the mindset of, let me experiment. Like, I'm doing a safety thing. Well, let me see what happens if I put my hand in the boiling liquid, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like,
That's fun.
And you know what? It sounds fun. It could teach you in the game. Doing that could completely ruin your life. Matter of fact, you put it in there. Let me show you what happens. Oh, here's an example of what happened to somebody in real life when they did that. Like, okay,
100%.
I'm not going to do that. Let me try to do this.
What you do is you have the character scream in agony, and then he looks at his hand, and boils are starting to appear on his hands, and he's like clutching his wrist, and he just keeps screaming, and then the game just abruptly ends. I think that would do it.
And the whole sequence is unskippable.
And then it cuts to the Dark Souls, you died.
And like one of the prerequisites on the game is like you have to keep your laptop audio on. So
Oh man. So I have a proposal for another potentially excellent game idea.
all right.
Let's hear it.
So one time I played this game that wasn't that much fun. It was a corporate learning game, and it was essentially a board game where you would roll a die and you had to move your pieces across the board, and then wherever you landed, it would ask you a question. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Kyle?
Maybe so.
Wait.
Yeah.
You didn't play the leadership game, did you?
I think you let me play one of the games you were building while you were building it.
Oh yeah.
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 I remember this game.
And it was super well polished, but I think one thing it really was missing, at least when I played it, was competition. And Brad mentioned it earlier, mentioned competition. So I think you can either have a simulation game, because like think about most trivia games, right? Like Trivia Pursuit. It's essentially a board game where you roll a die and you run around the board and you answer questions, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, a lot of games are like, a lot of board games are like that.
Yeah.
How much fun would it be, even if the questions are stupid, like, what was the first virus to attack a corporate entity? Like something super boring and dry. If it came from if there's some expectation that you would know that material, even a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and other people are with you who know it about as well as you do, and there's a chance they'll get it right or get it wrong.
Yeah.
Like even, especially if there's like a fun victory or a fun loss, like, oh, you have to dance in a circle if you get it wrong, or you don't get to move or whatever. Like the competition, especially if you're playing with people you like. I guess if you play with people you don't like, it's not going to be fun anyway, but you can make something really fun just by adding a little competition.
It's interesting that you say that because, and Kyle, you probably remember this. Remember when I made that Black History quiz game?
I do.
So, and Steve, you were there when I did that? I can't remember what the time was.
I remember that it happened, but I can't actually picture the game, so I don't know how much interaction I had with it.
So essentially, there was a period of time right before I left IBM. I came back later, but I made this game, and basically, it was a real-time game where so essentially, we had a Black History event at IBM, and I was asked, "Hey, can you help with a game?" I said, "Sure," like something fun for Black History. So I made a game that essentially everybody could play at the same time, right? And what it was is you just pulled your phone out, and in real time, I would ask you a question, and everybody would see the questions pop up at the same time. It's kind of like what's that game?
Kahoot.
It's like
Kahoot.
Kahoot. Yeah, it's just like Kahoot, but like Black History focused. I didn't know Kahoot existed, so they owe me money. But they stole my idea. But
they came after.
They stole IBM's idea.
That's true. They own everything. But so essentially, what it was just Black History questions, right? Like everybody in the room was there for the Black History event. They're just kind of, they're casually, people are sharing things, talking, speeches, and everyone could pull out their phone. It was accessible, right? Everybody could use it. You could do it on your laptop, your phone, whatever. And I'd ask a question, and it would be like a kind of a trick question, right? Like, who was the first person to do this? And then I'd have two people who you might think either one of them could be right, And I think what's like cool about that, and even what you're talking about, Steve, is that if you make the questions engaging fundamentally in themselves, I think you can make a trivia game like fun versus a trivia quiz, which feels more like a mechanical, like a test, right? And then also the stakes are very low at the Black History event. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. If you get it right, you get it right. And a lot of it was just bragging rights. I was like, how many people got it right? And they're like, oh, I got 10 right. I got 5. They're just excited,
Was there a leaderboard?
We can talk about leaderboards for real. There was no leaderboard. It was a community leaderboard where people shared how many they got amongst each other in their group of friends. So,
okay.
But no, absolutely not. Never.
Wait, why not?
You want me to get into leaderboards? Kyle, you want to talk about leaderboards?
Well, I'm just saying, like, on a board game, in Trivia Pursuit, you can see who's ahead, right? You see on the board where they are.
Okay.
And so it engenders a competition. But if I'm just sitting in a group of people and everyone's raising their hand saying, I got it right or wrong, like, I'm a lot less invested.
So
I think there was a score to some degree.
There's no scoring mechanism. I didn't know who got what. It was a personal.
Oh, it was local.
It was local.
So that was honor based.
It was so local, you could tell me 10, but people don't tend to lie about how they did, unless they're very.
I'm not worried about anyone.
Very
there was nothing at stake.
So okay, let's talk about leaderboards here for a second. Kyle, you want to go on this, or you want me to go ahead and you could just jump in as you feel?
Take it. Go ahead.
Okay.
What you got?
So let's talk about leaderboards. So something that I think is very common within learning games, especially in the corporate world, even outside of the company I'm in, and I've seen it outside, and is leaderboards. And the concept is, if we make a leaderboard, it engenders competition, right? Like, you go, hey, this person is doing better than me. I'm doing better than them. Oh, I want to stay at the top of the leaderboard. Well, leaderboards can do that. Video game leaderboards exist, and they do that. But let me ask you this, anybody who wants the answer. Think of a game that has a leaderboard. Have you ever, once in your life, tried to reasonably be within the top 100, top 10, top 1,000 of any game's leaderboard ever?
You mean
So
like
it's
a global leaderboard?
A global
not even
leaderboard, a national leaderboard, a state leaderboard.
A statewide leaderboard, sure, yeah.
I will say, I try to be towards the top of local leaderboards.
Okay, what's local? What's local mean to you?
So
house.
to me, local would be, so I just recently got a PlayStation 5, and I started playing Astro's Playroom.
Mm-hmm.
And as you play through that game, you unlock speed run competition stages. And at first I was avoiding them because I thought they were just like reruns of the stages themselves, but they're actually not. They're completely different. And so if you have that game, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun platforming sections. But anyway, so I went through one of them and I was like, I guess that was fine. But then on the final page of the results, I saw that two people that I'm connected to on PlayStation Plus, or I guess PlayStation in general, both have the game, and one of them had a faster time than me. And at that moment, I was invested.
Okay.
So local means amongst your friends, doesn't mean in your neighborhood.
Local to me just means that the pool is a reasonable size that I feel like I could compete, because especially on the global scales, the worst thing I think is when people cheese the leaderboards. They find a hack or something and get a perfect score.
They're just so good that like they can get whatever score they want.
Yeah, and so I think that would be the second thing that keeps me away from global leaderboards, is that some people have nothing but time to invest into this thing.
Sure.
And so I have no business competing with them.
Yes. So you described immediately what I think is a problem with leaderboards. Leaderboards have to, for the most part, to be enjoyable for 99% of the people, have to be local, right? It has to be, like you were saying, Steve, if there's a leaderboard, quote unquote, within the Black History Trivia game, it has to be localized to everybody in that room who's currently playing the game at the time, right? Because everybody who's in that room would probably say that they're all equal competitors, right? They're all friends. For them, it's like bragging rights. It's something fun that they can talk about. Hey, remember, and maybe it's temporal. Like, they're not going to talk about it 2 years from now. Remember that time I beat you in the Black History?
You still trash.
I still know more about Martin Luther King than you do. Maybe that's not what they're planning to do, but it's local. The problem with companies is that is something that is very hard to communicate, right?
Yeah.
Because number one, local means that the people that you know, and number two, that means that everybody that you know who would be reasonably within your sphere of influence also has to participate at the same level of engagement as everybody else. Because
some people just don't want to play.
Some people don't care. They'll play once or twice, and maybe let's imagine the learning game is something that's really fun, right? And it's, everybody in your local office likes it. But even within that, there's people who are just going to be more invested and some who are not, right?
Yes.
If it's an all-time leaderboard, now time. Okay, so first I want to talk about locality about leaderboards. That's really important. Locality. Global leaderboards, I think most people, unless you're that type of person, global leaderboards, you're like, absolutely not. I'm not trying to beat people in Japan, in Brazil. Right. Like, I'm good. Like, I can barely beat people in my household, right? And so I think locality is really important. The next is time. All-time leaderboards that are additive are the worst type of leaderboards that could ever exist, because they are fundamentally demotivating after a point if you're not a person who is always engaged, right?
Right. Sure.
And that point is
you can never
getting
catch
sooner.
up.
You can never catch up. And corporate companies and businesses love all-time leaderboards. How, who has done the most learning over the past year, right? Like, man, good luck catching up with the guy who's already got 150 hours of learning in January. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, okay, cool. I'm not
You're
even going
done.
to try no more. You know what I'm saying? So,
Ooh, that reminds me of AR back in elementary school.
Oh yeah,
I was that boy. I was the one winning for the entire grade.
AR?
you were the one. Accelerated reading program.
Never did AR?
Yeah, I would read the 3 books and I see somebody read 15 in the first month and I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah,
Good.
I was the one who read 15. I was the one who crushed everyone's dreams.
Man,
Yes. You know, so,
But
I would read
But-
one of the 3.
But here's the thing with AR, which was good, was that they had some prizes for like being the top, like the best, but they had
Yeah.
some prizes that were more inclusive. So it was anyone who got over this number. So even people who might be demotivated to try to beat me would still be motivated to like get 100 points to get a T-shirt or be part of the pizza party or
That's
whatever.
good.
It was.
but see, it's trying to counteract the problem that a leaderboard creates.
That's
That's
true.
fine. But if they successfully counteract it, isn't that a good thing?
No, I mean, I sure, but I think the problem is that like leaderboards are, I think in most cases, not good ways to motivate a learner. I don't know. I'm saying a lot. Kyle, what are your opinions about leaderboard? I got so many problems with leaderboard.
So I think fundamentally, yes, a leaderboard solo should not be the core mechanic or the core, I guess, place that people are going to look for their motive to continue.
Right.
I think if it works in tandem, like with what Steve was saying, there's other achievements that can be reached, other milestones that can be reached within the leaderboard to where you don't have to interact with the leaderboard.
Yeah.
I think
Low
that's
milestones too, like 10 points, 50 points.
Yeah, because I think there's both. I think you mentioned both demographics or all the demographics, Brett, of who would be interested in a leaderboard. Some people are gonna want that all-time leaderboard, and so for them you have it, but you don't force people. The other 99% of people, not you don't force them to interact with it. You give them alternatives, I guess. But see, I think that's also the reason why, when somebody mentions leaderboard, people treat it like it's something that's very simple, but they're complex by nature because there has to be a balance to them.
Sure. I guess I should say earlier when I naively mentioned leaderboards, all I really was asking was there a way to show like who was winning in the game? And you already answered the question. Not that I don't appreciate the leaderboard discussion. I just want it to be clear that I'm not like pro leaderboard. Like I definitely agree with all the problems you have with it.
Sure, 15 books, glasses, Steve.
That's what I'm saying. This
Dang.
boy is pro leaderboard. I mean,
I'm not pro. How dare you?
I mean, if you were the guy at the
I'm
top
not
of the
even-
list, you're pro leaderboard.
I'm not even pro. What is it that Smash Bros has now? GSP. I'm not even pro GSP.
Yeah, what's your GSP looking like right now?
I haven't played since Kazuya came out. I could not tell you.
Liar.
Look. This is how I feel about it, though. It's like at the end of the day, like I think the problem with most learning games is that the people who are behind the initiatives or the ideas or the goals or anything are not people who are fundamentally game developers. Because I promise you, Oregon Trail, Math Blasters, Sam, Pajama Sam, like these guys, like they are game developers. So they go in there with the mindset of like, we are going to make a game. And yes, we might have a motive. We might have a goal. We might want you to learn a thing. But fundamentally, we may need to make the game fun. And the learning will be secondary. Because when I play Apex Legends and I want to get better, I'm not necessarily thinking to myself, okay, like, how fast is a button click? Da 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 da. I'm more just like, I want to be better at the game. And a part of being better at the game is learning how to play the game better. So I'm going to be better at the game. So,
how many people do you think at the top of these corporate chains of command that want these games, how many of them do you think actually play the games that are made?
Yeah, I would say less than 0.
Less than 0.
They somehow anti-play. How do you negatively?
They're barely aware.
Oh, they're destroying other people's copies.
Other people play the game and they forget. The experience is taken from them.
Did I play God of War? I can't remember. Like
that reminds me of Willy Wonka. The second book had people have negative age in that book, and they go to like a negative world, like where people exist when they have negative age.
What?
How does that work?
Roald Dahl was
Roald Dahl was absolutely the
BFG.
The BFG is one of those books where you're like, wait a second, this book is about giants eating children, like straight up.
Really?
Yes. 100%.
Wasn't there a movie that was recently made about that?
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg.
That's the conflict is the giant protects the kids from other giants.
Yeah, they literally snatch you out your bed when you're sleeping and take you to their country and eat you, or they might eat you on the spot. It just kind of depends.
The witches, they turn children
horrible.
into mice and step on you.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Matilda was probably pretty jacked up in the book too. I don't know.
It was. Me and Shailene just watched Matilda, and that movie is jacked up in the movie.
Yeah.
That movie's like what, 30 years old?
Man, yes.
Dude, Danny DeVito narrates the movie.
Yes.
Can you believe?
Yeah,
it's so strange.
A treasure.
It's so strange, and he's also the neglectful, terrible parent to Matilda.
Yeah.
It's like, are you the hero? Like, why are you the one? Why are you the one telling us about her happy ending?
I know, right?
You're the problem.
They were like, "Hey, we go."
Danny DeVito is always the hero.
He really is. He really is in some way. They were like, "We want to save our budget. We wanted to have Morgan Freeman narrate it, but you know, Morgan Freeman was entering his peak during the."
So who's second best?
Danny DeVito. He's already in the movie. We don't have to pay him twice.
Or more.
Or more.
They probably keep the camera rolling while he's reading, so he doesn't know this is going to be there.
He's like, hey, do you mind just reading this? Like, so we can get a feel for it?
You read to Matilda about herself.
He's like, yeah, we want you to go ahead and just read it so that we can, when we hire somebody to actually do it, they know how to do it right. He's like, sure, absolutely.
Okie doke,
got him.
Man.
I'm right, you're wrong. I'm big, you're small.
So,
oh, man.
So you know what's interesting, Kyle, about your question about how many people at the top? I think that's kind of the difficulty with a lot of training in general is that there's a separation between the person who's mandating the training and the person who's like
being trained.
Yeah, who's being trained.
Consuming it,
right? So
sure.
Because you know, you're not necessarily going to ask the new guy to determine how the training is going to be done, but the new guy needs to have a say on what's beneficial. There should be like an exit interview, right? Like, hey, like, how was the Domino's training? Like, oh, it was really good. It taught me. How was the Pizza Hut training? Oh man, it was really bad. I don't, you know, like, yeah. And without the fear of getting in trouble, you know,
right.
And also, I think for any team or any group or any person who's going to go into a gamification effort, they don't need. Okay. Also, okay. I'm going on tangents, but I believe that the whole idea of a gamification expert is a scam for the most part. I think most of the people who claim to be experts in the learning game world are con artists.
Oh yeah,
nice.
That's just my personal opinion. 3Ms, aka Kyle, you were just looking into this. What do you think about this? Since you know everything, you should be able to answer this question.
Well, since I am an SME on the matter, check me out on my website to see all about learning games. No, so
websites.
I agree. That actually be pretty awesome if it was, but I agree. You know that just because the way that a lot of, I'm not gonna say all, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who out there are trying to do the right thing that just have no sort of platform. But the ones who are marketing themselves as thought leaders in the gamification space are pandering to what corporations want to hear as far as, you know, making these games. Because the vast majority of them that if you just type in gamification you know, in Google, the ones that come up first are horrendous as far as actually succeeding at teaching anyone anything. But they are very successful at looking like mainstream games.
Yeah.
And that's at least that's my thoughts on it.
So I mean, I guess in my let me ask you the follow-up question. What does that mean to look like mainstream games? Like, how are they, pulling the wool? You know what I'm saying? Like, how are they getting away with
this? AAA gaming?
Right. So, in most cases, they don't have the budget for, AAA. However, asset flips, I'm sure nobody listening to this podcast, and neither of you guys are unaware of what asset flips are.
Well, what are asset flips? To define it.
Yes.
What's an asset flip, sir? Teach me.
So an asset flip
in a game
is when someone has $100 and a really, really cool story idea. So they download one of the free game development platforms, Unity or Unreal, and they watch a handful of Bracky's tutorials and realize that they actually don't know how to code. So they find someone on Fiverr who has coded a game, and they actually haven't coded a game either. They just steal other people's code. And so they hire this person on Fiverr, and they pay them $15. And then they use the other $75 to buy very pretty, pre-made 3D assets. Very generic looking, but also very nice. And they put them into their game and try to pass it off as something completely unique.
And polished
all that,
and handmade.
Exactly. Yet all of the assets that went into building this game have been flipped into their new intellectual property.
Yeah, that sounds like a good definition. And I think one of the parts of I'm going to just adding to that definition is that they also are aware of their audience and their audience ignorance of what games are. Because it's kind of like they know what games look like, but they've never played a game. So they don't know what makes a game fun or not fun, good or bad. So even if you were to show them a demo of a half-made, terrible-looking game that clearly doesn't work, they don't really know because they've never seen a working game. They don't know what works. So it's like the perfect scenario because you have these people, and they generally tend to be of the older demographic who also are relatable to the people who are probably running these companies, bigger running divisions and stuff. Like, oh yeah, like we associate. And yeah, you understand that these kids playing Minecraft, they don't know anything, right? So there's that relatability, and then there's a lack of understanding of what a game is. And sometimes those people are making learning games and don't know what games are. Like, genuinely. You know?
Thank you.
One more. Hey, we just needed that. Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like it's... Well, let me ask you guys this. What do you think is the solution to, like, adult learning games? Because I think kid learning games, there's no problem. Like, I think people are solid. You know, like, I see stuff that my niece plays, and I'm like, yo, I want to play that game. Like legit looks fun. Yeah. Like, I know my shapes, but I want to do this. You know, I want to play.
I still want to play the games I played as a kid.
Yes. I'm thinking about the Incredible Machine right now. Like, genuinely, how can I find a copy? You know. So, what do you guys think is the solution to the adult learning game problem? Like, how can maybe a more general rule that you probably think, you know, a company could use or a developer, you know?
I think what's moving good learning games forward is the being open to scenario-based learning. Because one thing that we talked about a whole lot already is the idea of a quiz as the method to find out if someone has learned something. But I think as we move away from here's your knowledge check after reading something, you know, and move more to this is what I want someone to do. Let me create something. And it doesn't even have to be that robust. You know, you can click through images and get the idea of how to create something. But it's missing when you don't have, what a scenario allows you to do is things that we've described already, you know, just this conversation. We give them the opportunity to have failure states or to make the wrong decisions to see what happens when they experiment, you know, and then at the end of it, have gone through the process that when they leave that learning, they need to apply to their job.
So what you're describing is, say that we're trying to learn about GDPR, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of a trivia, like a bunch of videos or whatever, or reading, followed by a quiz, maybe it's a bunch of videos and reading followed by scenarios where you have to make decisions.
Ooh.
Like a text-based game.
I like that.
It's like your client comes to you and says, we need the information on these customers. What do you do? So, you know, and you have options.
Exactly. Because
we can make an Oregon Trail. We can make a text-based game where if you're wrong, you get dysentery and you get fired.
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you know what's funny? Like, I think something that, like, that sounds really cool. And then I was even thinking, what if we took a step back and instead of doing the videos and the reading prior to you playing the game, why don't you just play the game? Like think about...
And have, like, the manual nearby.
Yeah, like, think about how, like, really good tutorials are done in games. And tutorials are difficult in general, even in non-learning games. But, like, think about how you onboard a person to play a game. Like, you enter them into a space where they can do just one task and, like, get comfortable with that. And then you add another task and you add another task. And then eventually you have all these elements. You got, you know, if you take something like Portal, right? You start with, like, Portal 2, like, oh, you start with these portals and then you get the goos. And then you know, and then you start stacking and they're learning the whole time, right? Like, what if it's a GDPR game where you start on the simplest level of something somebody could learn? Like, oh, we want you to manage data received from a customer. What do you do? Like, and you're like, I guess I just delete it. You know, like, immediately that's wrong. Okay, cool. You know.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so
there'd be a button. There's a button that literally is just like, use the data for whatever your company does.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, like,
and you just push it every couple minutes because someone has a legitimate request and they want their data.
Yeah, and you just give them a scenario so they realize that they learn the results while they're playing. You know, like,
learn that your actions have consequences.
And the best part of a text-based game is you don't need a lot of high-quality assets. You just need writing. And it also lends itself to RNG, which is great because that can make the game more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be more difficult if, like, there was maybe it wouldn't be more difficult, but you can iterate faster through different scenarios, through writing different scenarios if it's just text.
Yeah, you don't even have to be, like, a great writer for a text-based game. And a lot of text-based games that I've seen, and even, like, you know, games that just have a lot of text in them, they tend to do better whenever the text isn't trying so hard. You know, when they want me to get information and that's what they give me, those are the best experiences. Because I understand, you know, wanting to wrap it around a story and having your narrative. And I think to a degree, even for the GDPR?
Mm-hmm.
Even for that game, you know, there could be some overarching story, like you're part of this corporation. But you don't have to shove that down somebody's throat every moment in their learning game experience.
That's real. Yeah, it's kind of like in a good movie when they're writing, like, they're trying to introduce you to a character who has, like, financial issues and maybe health issues. A good movie, what they don't do is, like, you come in and the character is sitting in their house and they get a phone call like, hey, Steve, oh man, I'm really struggling with all my financial issues and me being sick because of my job at the plant. You know, like, that's, like, terrible writing, right? Okay, bye. You know, bye. Talk to you later. Like, good writing is the person's in there just walking through their kitchen, heading out the door, and you just see a whole bunch of letters with red notices and, you know, maybe a poster from the plant that they worked at, like, get ahead,
or they're
work
wearing their
harder,
PPE.
Safe, production first, safety second, like immediately you get the vibe. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder, like you let the people bring the pieces together. But,
And that's something that isn't integral to what you're going to be doing either in a lot of cases. And in just to kind of piggyback off of that, in good movies, if they really want you to get the point, then they'll keep dropping subtle hints like that. So you won't just have the one opportunity to get it and be like, oh, well, why is he sick all of a sudden? You're usually not going to get to that point either.
True. Like they do a good job of drip feeding it through scenarios, through maybe he was just coughing lightly, and he opens it up and there's a little bit of blood in his tissue, but he just puts it in his pocket so somebody else doesn't see it or something. Like, oh, like why is he hiding that? That seems pretty severe. Like there might be little pieces, and I think where you said
there's ways you can go with that.
Where you said, Steve?
It was just a comment. I was just saying, that's one way you can go about doing that. The guy with blood in his pocket.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about, like when thinking about how do you make a good learning game, is similar to licensed games. You ever hear about like the licensed games that do well versus the ones that don't do well? Like, have you ever heard about the dynamic between the studio that's making the game and the person who owns the license? Like, generally how that dynamic works. It's generally like a good game. For example, let's take Arkham Asylum, like the original Batman game, right? Instead of the Warner Brothers in DC overly like, hey, we want to make sure that Batman looks like this, and Batman's this tall, and Batman has, like, they were like, hey, we trust that you guys are going to do what you need to do. Like, we want you to make sure you don't break these rules. Batman doesn't have superpowers. Batman, you know what I'm saying? But they
doesn't kill.
Exactly. Like, so you basically give them the rules, and then you trust, you trust them with it, like maybe corporations need to trust like the right people to do the job and like back off,
Yeah.
Sure. That's just good management or bad management though.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes in the handoff because I think if you give somebody just a little bit of information, then you might not trust that they could get it done on their own because you didn't supply them with enough. And so you feel like you have to keep your hands in the pie the whole time. And so I think a big part of it is like equipping the people who you trust to do it.
Yeah. Or embedding a SME, a subject matter expert who is just in an advisory role on the team. Like they just answer questions. They don't give any input on what you're doing. It's like, hey, like how does GDPR work in this country? How does GDPR work in that? Instead of being like, hey, like make this GDPR game, but you need to make it for our company. Okay, cool. What does that mean? We'll tell, and then you make something like, no, it needs to be like this and it needs to be like that. It's like, why didn't you tell me this information? Like from the jump, or, I don't know. Like,
yeah, because sometimes it's not intuitive, but it is something that they've always, or seem to have always had an opinion about, but just weren't forthcoming with the information. And I could say, to a degree, that might be on the game developer, to ask the right questions in the beginning. But it doesn't behoove anyone to withhold any information.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's real. Like it doesn't but I think people who are not good planners are also like people who are like really high level. They don't want to sit down and write a long document that gives you all this information. They just want to give you what they need to give you in the time that they might see you for the 10 minutes and then,
yeah.
Or have a 5-hour long meeting where you just argue about the color of somebody's shoes,
Gosh.
Love it.
Well, okay. So I feel like, we're kind of coming on the tail end of our conversation. So I'm going to throw out a really random question. All right. So I want everybody to, and I can start to give y'all time to think, like to think of if you could make a learning game, like choose a topic. This time, Steve, don't use GDPR because that's a good one. I want you to do something different. Because you seem to already have a good one. But choose a topic and like think of how you would make the best learning game possible, like for adult learners in particular. Okay. So for me, it would be like teaching people, I'll go back to my first example because I think this is a good one. Like, and I didn't really think this through, but I'm gonna think through live. Is helping people to learn how to speak in public, right? It's like one of those things that I feel like,
that's a tough one.
Like either you feel comfortable with it or you don't. And honestly, I think nobody feels comfortable with it. You just get used to it. Like get used to the nervousness. You get used to the anxiousness. And I think it would be really cool to make basically a simulator game where essentially like you have a character who's like gonna be like trying to make their way to be the Tony Robbins, you know, has hundreds of thousand people that they do speeches to, or like a Barack Obama who's like everybody loves hearing him and they pay millions of dollars for to hear him speak. And what you do is it's kind of like an RPG. And like what you do is like every day or every sequence ends with a battle, which would be a public speaking engagement. And what you do at the beginning in your planning prep period before the fights is like, you know, level up certain abilities. Like, okay, cool. Like I'm going to research, you know, what is the best way to speak in this scenario? Or how do I hold my hand? How like practice not saying you know, like just little pieces of different things. And like they level up kind of like in a Skyrim way. Right. And maybe the way that you level them up is through doing some kind of practice. And then in battle, what it is like you're given like a topic or something, and then you have to give a speech on it. And what happens is you go up there and you're in front of the crowd and like you say something, and your whole game dynamic is reading the crowd. So you're like, so today we're going to talk about bug snacks. And then you see the crowd like their spirit go down, like
they all sigh.
You're like, ugh. And then like you have like three options. Like, okay, what do? Do I just Bug Snacks is a great game, or do you say, I know a lot of you guys don't like Bug Snacks, but I feel like, you know, like helping people to think through scenarios,
empathize,
and get comfortable and feel it, and then they get more and more complex. Like, so how about you're in a room where you don't get any feedback, right? Like, okay, how do you choose a person in the crowd that you feed off of to get your information? Because that's what I do. When I'm in a bad room, I look for a person who is giving me feedback and I talk to them because they're going to give me, you know what I'm saying? Or how do you deal with technical issues that go wrong? Okay, the mic doesn't go off. What do you do? Wait for the people in the back to turn the mic on, you know, like, and you just keep going through all these scenarios until you get to Tony Robbins level, and you're doing this, you have these crazy scenarios where it's hundreds of thousands of people, there's audio issues, there's, you know, somebody's your phone is ringing, and you're just learning how to do, you know, like it just kind of stacks. And eventually, like all of the skills that you use in the game, you would just use in real life. Like they're 100% real things and like real proven practices. So that would be my game, you know, something like that. Okay.
And it's like a third person game, and there's options, there's dialogue options like in Skyrim or something.
Yeah, exactly like that. It'd be
you pick up loot boxes and they have different microphones in it.
Yeah, and
oh my god,
and even like one part they have different microphones, and that would be, and then like one part is like, what do you wear for that day? You know, like you choose your clothing for your audience. And yes, loot boxes on like your socks colors. Because I feel like in Pokemon Unite, everybody loves a good sock coming out of your loot box.
Good pair of socks.
We could wear fancy socks.
You know,
that's actually really good. It's in terms of like if you're gonna have loot boxes or just customization, the fancy socks is definitely the way to go.
Fancy socks,
and also like teaching people that it's. Don't worry about what you look like as in like if you're black, you're white, you're tall, you're Hispanic, whatever, you know, like just like you can customize yourself as much as you want, and it doesn't affect how people, you know, like, but just be aware that what you wear might affect, you know, how people, because that's true, you know. So anyway, so that's my game.
You walk up in there with a tank top on.
I have a really good idea.
All right, let's go. Let's hear it.
Hey. All right, you're setting the bar high.
Yeah, so I've the last like 5 or 6 minutes, I actually was thinking through how I would do this in an Oregon Trail or a Dark Room style game.
Okay.
Ooh.
But then I thought of an even better mode or a better style, and this is it. So the topic would be, so this is something I deal with all the time, is where I work at a Voxy, we deal with troubleshooting. So I'm building features. Usually I'm like, all right, here's this new thing that we're trying to build, and we break it into tickets, and that's my job. But we all kind of take turns troubleshooting. We solve bugs when they get thrown to us. And obviously, we're deploying once a week. And so sometimes things can go catastrophically wrong. And we have a live service that we're selling to people. So we need to have very quick reactions and be able to like triage and solve something quickly. So we do monthly game days where one guy essentially comes up with a bunch of problems that he's either seen or can imagine. And he makes those things happen. And we take turns trying to diagnose and fix the problem in small little teams of like 3 or 4 people.
That's pretty cool.
So that's, wow. I wouldn't say it's fun, but it's a thing we do. It's kind of a nice change of pace from the normal.
You described it like it's very enjoyable.
Really
it generally is. It can be a slog because you start at like 9 or 10, and then we go to like 3 or 4.
Okay.
And even when you're not gaming, you're still watching the other teams go. So it's anyway. I was thinking, how cool would it be if instead of game day where he actually solves or creates those issues and you have to solve them in vitro, we just simulate those problems and you have to solve them Ace Attorney style.
Ooh.
Where it's a puzzle that's given to you, and instead of lawyers and defendants and everyone giving testimonies, you have your coworkers and your clients like filing bug reports.
Oh.
And you can like ask for information, which would be the equivalent of like, going on, looking at our Google account and checking to see what services are not running, or using Cube Control to like see what pods are up and what their logs look like. And you can make the decisions to do that. And it's given to you there'd be like handmade situations, kind of like what we do now. And obviously this doesn't just work for telephony. This could work for any company where you have to do, quick live troubleshooting, is teaching people what our tools are to diagnose and solve these problems. And more than that, like what kinds of problems you can expect to see if they're, common enough.
Objection. Yeah.
Yeah. And an objection would be, I don't know, but I don't know what an objection would look like. But like part of the thing that we have to deal with is not just troubleshooting, but like communicating with the rest of the company, communicating with our clients. Like, hey, we're having an outage. These features might not work. So there's all sorts of details and mechanics you could put into such a game.
Maybe it'd be like an intervention.
What do you mean? Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I like.
Yeah,
I like the idea that like you kind of have to. I guess it's a puzzle solving kind of thing where you kind of have to ask the right questions to get the right information so you can make the right decisions. It's like,
right.
like an Ace Attorney, you like when you're like cross-examining a witness, you're like trying to get the right choice to hear something so to ask about a particular item in your inventory and blah, blah, blah. Like, that'd be
right.
super duper cool. And you could train people. And like you said, it's like cross industry, especially if you're just teaching people how to deal with, triage, like live, like it doesn't matter. You just need to learn how to solve problems as they're happening, or, respond to them quickly or communicate. That's super cool idea.
Problem solving games are always fun.
Yeah. And I think anybody would like to play that, to be honest.
Yeah. I'm pretty stoked about it, actually.
He's like, just to let you know, I'm designing.
Looking forward to the 2022 release there, Steve.
I'm going to quit my job and sell this game back to the company.
He's like, it's good.
and then ask for my job back.
It's gonna be at the same E3 that they show Half-Life 3. Like, I'm excited.
Bro, get out of here.
I'm ready for it.
It'll be a VR game.
Oh yes, a mix of AR and VR. Like just do it all.
A full haptic suit will be available.
And all you're doing is typing.
And your coworkers can punch you just out of nowhere, and you just feel it.
No, the client punches you.
Ooh.
It's like entering battle mode. The client got hands. They ain't got nothing to lose.
Get my website back up right now.
It's like, my computer's not working. So
I want to listen to my voicemails again.
Battle mode. All right, Kyle, what's your idea?
So my idea would be kind of, I guess, more general than you guys, but I guess it's still kind of in the same vein. So mine would be focused about leadership, focused on leadership and like coaching, I guess, if you want to get into the deep, but mostly leadership. And so with all the leadership training that I've taken and been a part of, a lot of it is an umbrella approach, which I think is fine, but it never gets granular enough, in my opinion. Like, because individuals are so different and have different needs as far as leadership, and then leading them, and helping them to grow, I think are they're treated synonymously, but I think they're actually a little different. Because you can lead somebody to where they're successful to you, but to help somebody grow to where they're successful within themselves, I think it takes more than just being a good leader by the book. And so I would want to create a game that would dive into you being a leader that's investing in other people. And so like my first idea, I guess, of how you'd play is that you would just kind of catch employees like Pokemon and they'd have stats.
Oh my gosh.
Their stats would be, their different strengths and weaknesses as far as how they help your corporation, right? And so like you could say, I didn't think too much further than this, but like, giving them the right opportunities to build those stats, or in putting them in the right scenarios where they can use their stats to fight off different, enemies,
problems.
Or and solve different problems, or they meet with different clients and help you win clients because they have a certain amount of skills, or, and then it's kind of like, gives you that management side of things where, at its core, you're still their leader, I guess, but you can't treat them all the same. Like, you can't send them all to the same fight for them to just gain experience points. It has to be tailored for them to gain rewarding experience, I guess.
Well, they would get experience through like the more like daily tasks, right? Not necessarily through battles, which are special.
So I would think, like probably both.
Well, both, sure, but not just the battles, I'm saying.
Right. Yeah, like you would train them, and then they gain experience from actual real world scenarios that you'd send them out to.
Like the job system in Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Exactly. Yeah, you'd send them out. Yeah, because that's a perfect example.
Yeah. All right, Pokemon, you did something right.
Hey, there's a game that reminds me of this Game Dev Story. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it, but it's basically like you're building your own game development studio. And
oh yeah, I have heard of it.
I love that game. Like, it's one of the
I played Game Dev Tycoon. It's like a ripoff.
Yeah, so fun. But I feel like you like you said, you have different people who come in and you gotta like train them, and like how much you invest in them is how much they grow. Like, if you think about Pokemon, like if you leave your Pokemon in the box, right, like you have they're just there, and maybe sometimes you can't invest in everybody, but what you do is, like, for particular people who you can't invest in personally, you use your rare candy, which is like sending them to training. Like, a specific training, it costs you more money or whatever, but it's like, hey, like, I want my designers to be better, but I don't have time to coach him. Let me send him to designing camp, because that's what you guys do, right? Designers go to design camp. So
every month.
So no, that's super cool. Yeah.
So I was thinking about like the ways that you could get employees, because like catching them with Pokeballs would be kind of funny. But like if they actually came to, like, maybe you had to actually go through the interview process, like if they came to you.
What if you did it at a career fair? Like, what if you every, like, you could go and set up a booth at a career fair, and then you'd have like these battle scenarios where like a person's like, but I want a company that does this. And you're like, well, our company does this. And they're like, I don't know. I want to really have this free time. You're like, well, we offer, and you're trying to like defeat them, and like
their HP goes down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you fight Pokemon or when you fight other trainers, it's like a merger afterwards. So you just get all their employees.
Or what if it was like you and another person were trying to like capture the person at the same time, so you kind of have to like sell your company
Oh.
better and like your coaching style and, you know, like da da da. It's like a battle, like encouragement, you know, dismissiveness, you know, like, I don't know. Compensation.
It's all
Insurance.
compensation. It's all compensation.
Student loan refinancing.
401k matching.
You show up at first with one of those one of those job posts. It's like, I'm looking for an entry level position with 4 years of experience and $2,500 a year.
2,500. Oh man.
Man.
And you have to like realize that that's crap and that you have to add a few zeros here and there.
Yo, one time I saw a listing on Stack Overflow for a senior engineer. I think it was iOS engineer with like 8 to 9 years of experience, who has done all this crazy stuff. And the pay was, I think, like $15,000 a year. And I was like,
What?
You have no idea what you're saying right now. Like, you don't even understand.
Surely that's a typo.
No,
surely it was
full-time.
150,000.
I looked at the because I was like, nah, this is fake. Full time, all these prereqs or requirements, and I was like, bro, y'all aren't. If y'all hire somebody, it's a straight child. It's Ash Ketchum, who's somehow is surviving.
Know your value, King.
It's definitely Gary. Smell you later.
I'm working for a company.
They're paying me $15,000.
Like,
I saw a picture the other day. It was like anti-Gary, and he said, "Smells you now."
That's cursed.
It is. That is cursed. Cool. Well,
it's Morgan Freeman. I smell you.
I mean, I think one thing that I've gotten from this conversation is that we are the subject matter experts on learning games. And
SMEs, baby.
SMEs. And if a company's trying to do it, they should talk to us, the Super Agile Bros, Super Gamification Bros. We are the ones. We didn't even.
Don't just talk to us.
Like,
give us money. Talk to our wallet.
Call Steve directly.
$2,500 a year minimum.
That's right.
Sorry, maximum.
So, you can go lower. I don't suggest it.
I'm willing to negotiate lower. It's funny. Like throughout this whole conversation, like we never really talked about the word gamification, but I feel like we kind of wrapped it up. Like technically, gamification doesn't exist. It's like you need to make a game that's good.
It's a buzzword, man.
Mm-hmm.
You're a buzzword.
Disrespect.
Only on Tuesdays.
But yeah, man. I mean, a good conversation. I mean, you guys have any last words on the great gamification debate, and any last thoughts that you were thinking and didn't get a chance to throw it out there before we end it?
Masters of the Elements is really good. There was a physics game called like Zap where you learned about optics and electricity and sound waves.
Cool.
That was really good. Lots of great kids games for learning.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely check out all the games that we suggested.
Especially
if
you are
emulate
a child.
all of them.
If you're about 5 years old, talk to your parents.
Like most of the Pajama Sams and Putt Putts are on Steam now.
No kidding. Really?
Yeah. There was a bundle that I sent to my brother because he has 5-year-old twins.
Bro.
And yeah, I was like, you gotta get these games in their hands, man.
Teach them now while they're young.
Is it better to have them on Steam or like on iPad? Because realistically, I feel like
for sure iPad, but I don't know if they're available, and if they are, I don't know how much they would cost.
That's fair.
Double.
That's fair. Double. Yeah, and the iPad. Everything is. I bought Final Fantasy Tactics, and it was like $18 on the iPad, and then like $3 on the 3DS or something. I was like, come on, get out of my face.
They know what they doing.
If I didn't want to throw this out there, Zombie Sales Apocalypse. That's all I gotta say. That's all.
Just search.
That's all I gotta say. Zombie.
You won't be.
That game actually looked somewhat fun.
That's how they get you, man. Don't fall for it.
I might buy it.
Look. I don't know if you remember this, Kyle, but back in the day when Zombie Sales Apocalypse first showed up and we got like a preview of it.
I remember.
Man. Bruh.
It's I will say it's improved since then.
It's a whole nother world. I mean, it's
completely different.
It's completely different. So hats off to whatever they're doing. But the original rendition, I can't believe that was like publicly available for any human being. It was, I don't like to down nobody. I appreciate anybody who's willing to do anything. But you know what? Like,
I mean, once you put it on the internet and then if you endorse it,
yeah,
real
Best of luck
feedback
to
you deserve. You put it out there. I mean,
yeah.
If it's factual that your game,
and if you're asking for money, it's maybe at the time they weren't asking for money, but like,
I'm sure they were.
Like overall, I try to be a positive person on the internet because that doesn't really exist, like positivity. But like, come on, like, just check it out. Zombie Sales Apocalypse. Holla at it.
Check it out.
So anyway, thank you guys for checking out this episode of Super Agile Bros. As always, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate.
You mean glasses, Steve?
Oh, I'm sorry, 4-Eye Steve. I really appreciate everything. Guys, keep checking out what we're doing. We got so much more coming down the pipe. We're thinking of new ideas. We've been talking in the background. We're gonna try new things. Hopefully to just see what excites us and excites you, the people, our fans, our adoring.
Mostly us, though.
Mostly us. But yeah. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you want to go and play some learning games, some children learning games. There's plenty of great.
Learned about dysentery.
Dysentery, please. You can buy it on Amazon nowadays. Dysentery. So
just bottled up.
It comes in a plastic bag. It's like a yellow liquid.
Oh my gosh!
And it's like
cloudy.
It's like drink in one gulp.
You have to drink it all at once. God knows what happens if you drink it twice.
That's all your body would think. So anyway, thank y'all for watching. Listening to Super Agile Bros. And as always, we love you guys, and we will see you guys later. Y'all take it easy. Peace.